All right, we're back. So this is part 3 of the series where we're going to take a Hugging Face model and deploy it on Amazon Sagemaker with ZenML pipelines. This video, we're going to be focusing on the training pipeline. Now, the training pipeline is one of the most interesting parts of this entire piece, and it has a few moving things. So we're just going to be going through them one by one. First of all, at the very top of this diagram, you can see there's the artifact store. You might remember this artifact store and the artifacts in it from the previous pipeline. So the feature engineering pipeline was producing these artifacts and versioning them. We're going to be taking one version of that and going to be consuming it in our pipeline. And that pipeline is then going to be training the model and producing a new tokenizer and a new model, which is then going to be pushed to Hugging Face, and a new commit is going to be created and tracked in ZenML. So that's the most simple way of putting it. But you can also see there's a few other moving pieces. Now, every time you run the pipeline on the left side, you can see that the pipeline needs to run on a ZenML stack. A stack is simply the configuration of how your pipeline is run. Again, this is one of the fundamental pieces of ZenML, and you should learn about it more in the docs. In this particular case, I'm using the local stack, so everything is sort of default and storing things in my local machine. But I am also using MLflow to track some of my experiments. We're not going to be focusing on MLflow in this tutorial, but just bear in mind that this is part of the code base. On the right side is something new in ZenML, which is the model control plane. The model control plane is really a collection of all the pieces of information you need in order to make a really coherent picture of your machine learning model. Every time you run a pipeline and you annotate it with the right things, you're going to be creating a new model version inside your ZenML dashboard. This model control plane is just going to be linking all the pipelines, all the artifacts, all the model artifacts together into one coherent view, so that every time you see a model, you know how it was trained, where if it made any predictions, and just to have a 360-degree view of this particular model. So I'm really excited about this feature. So let's maybe go into the code base and see how this all works. Now, if you remember, your feature engineering pipeline had the tokenizer and the tokenized data set already produced. So we need to be able to copy the versions of those so that we can feed it into our training pipeline. So here I am. I'm just going to be clicking on the base tokenizer, copying the ID over, and going back. And I already filled in the dataset artifact. So you can see that I've given it the dataset artifact ID, which I copied over before, and the tokenizer artifact ID, which I just pasted in. And now let's run the pipeline. Again, what's going to happen now is that this pipeline will figure out, okay, we're going to be loading some external artifacts, which were produced by another pipeline. And we're going to be creating a training run where we're going to be loading those artifacts in, running a training job, and then producing all these different models as well that I just showed. So at this point, you can see that a new model was created implicitly. I called it digital BERT sentiment analysis, and a new model version was also created. So while this is running, maybe what we can do is we can go over to our ZenML cloud control plane. So these screens are currently available only in ZenML Cloud, but for the ZenML OSS users, what they can do is they can also use the ZenML model command line to see basically the same things that you're seeing here. So you can see a digital BERT sentiment analysis was created by me just a few minutes ago, and within it is a running model version. Now, while we're running, of course, we will annotate it with a few things, and you can see in the open source dashboard as well, we are running this pipeline. The really cool thing about this is you can see the tokenizer is the same ID, the tokenized dataset is the same ID as well, as we provided in the script. And you can see the training is done, and we have a new model and tokenizer that is produced. And then now we are registering the model and pushing to Hugging Face. So this might take a few seconds. I'm just going to pause the video and see what happens afterwards. All right, so you can see that the pipeline ran successfully. And if I go over to my ZenML dashboard, you can see that my tokenizer and my trained tokenizer and model were now produced and deployed to Hugging Face. And if I go over to my artifact here and see the metadata, you can see that the revision and all the repo ID and all those things were actually stored. And you can see this is the commit ID that was made. If I wanted to see on the Hugging Face side what happened, you can see this is old, and if I refresh it, I expect to see a new number. Yes, exactly. And you can see this commit was created with pretty much the same number. I think a better view of this might be 00143FA. You can see 00143FA, which is exactly the same. So ZenML is keeping track of where this model was pushed. And yeah, you also additionally get all the benefits of what was changed, which is really cool because you can still use the Hugging Face UI and you're not locked into any tool. So the Hugging Face thing is part of the stack. Perfect. Let's perhaps run this pipeline one more time and see what happens on the ZenML model control plane side. So we're going to run this again with the same data, and let's see what happens. So I'll see you in a second. All right, so the second run is completed now. It's made another commit to Hugging Face. And if you go over here, you can see that another run of the pipeline has been created. Again, with the same tokenizer and tokenized data set, but with new downstream steps. And what's interesting here is if you go over to the cloud dashboard, you can see the new models being created. And now we have two versions, each corresponding to the two pipelines we ran. And there's nothing much in here right now, but we are going to be, of course, using this particularly for the next pipeline. So just keep in mind, we created two versions. All of them are tracking everything like the artifacts and everything that was needed to reproduce these. And now we're going to be moving on to the next video where we're going to be promoting a particular model and slowly make our way to production. So see you on the next one.